How did you first hear about the coronavirus? Where, when, and what was your response?
Actually, I was following the news. So the very first time I actually pay attention to the news was when I was at work. I was reading that the coronavirus, like there were some cases here in the United States. And my first reaction is like, oh, it may be like a really, really bad cold or flu. So I was just talking with my peers that it's important to take care of your health and to, if you know that you're feeling sick, to stay home. And that maybe I already had it because I had some of the symptoms. But that was, I remember, the very, very, very first conversation that I had about a specific coronavirus.
When did you say that was, Monica?
At work, it was early March.
Oh, okay. That's quite recent.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yes.
I had first heard about it, actually, so I write for a paper, online publication called The Post Millennial, and I had heard about it in December, but my contact had actually lived in Wuhan, and so he said there's all this commotion going on, and he had heard about it actually very early in November. And so I heard the news in December. Of course, I'm in media slightly in and out. So it was just basically through my friends, just like Monica, kind of learning slowly about, is this actually a legitimate thing? Do we have to be concerned? Is this going to affect the world, or is it going to be quite isolated? So it's basically through online communication that I heard about it, and it was in December.
Mine was similar. I am my other volunteer effort is a publishing editor for New Right Network, and it started hitting our conversations around mid-January, but really in February it hit, where early February, where we were all really focused on it and talking about it, and what it sounded like to us, I agree with what Monica was saying. The conversation was, this is a worse than a cold, but it's not going to be anywhere nearly as bad as the flu. And, I mean, we shrugged our shoulders and said, well, let's focus on the flu, because that kills a whole lot of people every year and goes really unnoticed. And then soon after it really hit, and the gravity of just how bad it could be, really came to life.
So that was March, and that was December. And for you, Dave, when was that?
The first I heard about it was like mid-January.
Mid-January.
Yes, as far as the news, I think for me, I can say, like, I heard about the news, but I really didn't pay attention to it. In fact, I think there were things on Facebook about like people that were eating like some soup that had some bad or why not. But I don't necessarily follow the news or the sensationalism of the news. So I kind of heard it, but brush it off until I remember March, because at work we start talking about it. So I was like, yeah. So
this is so interesting. It's a follow-up question. How, when you heard this, wherever you heard it from, how did you determine if it was, like Mattea said earlier, legit? Like, did you do like a Snopes? Do you even trust Snopes? Like, what did you do to confirm certain things?
Personally, I reached out to a couple of individuals I knew, like my friend who actually lived in China, speaks the language fluently. And I wanted to see what was actually happening on the ground, if people really were being, shut up in their doors being soldered so people couldn't leave their houses. What was actually going on? Were people actually dying in the streets? What were the effects actually long term? And so I actually reached out to personal contacts, and they actually said that in some cases, yes, people are dying in the streets, but it's being determined as corona, but it's not corona. Other people were saying, you know what, this is just kind of a flu-like thing, kind of like what everybody else is saying. Don't be concerned about it. So it was a mixed message. And so when stuff started coming out in the news about it being so severe, I reached out to these people again, and they said, it's not that bad. So for me, it's all been mixed messages, even from people on the ground. So I am just I've kind of pulled back and have tried to be very discerning as to what I'm hearing and what kind of registers with me, and as well as what some authorities are saying on the issue.
Yeah, I think the important part is to use discernment. I think I like that word. And also to take everything with a grain of salt. In my case, we have hosted an exchange student before from Japan and another one from South Korea. So they're in Asia. Therefore, I remember like around February, like towards the end of February, our son from Japan, he told us, I'm not going to be able to travel to certain areas because they're not allowing us. And I was like, why? And so he mentioned it. And in my head, once again, everything was like Asia, far away. and our daughter from South Korea was asking us if we were okay or how are things here. And at that point, things were normal here. So I heard what they were saying, but once again, in my head, it was like, it's far away, it's not here.
Yeah, I agree. I really get most of my news from several people on Twitter, where they do lots of research, and they'll have long threads that are substantiated by different solid firsthand research, and that's really where I look. If I hear anything, I just take 2 or 3 hours out of my day and I just dive into these Twitter threads, and then I go from there to do my own research and understanding. And the things that stood out to me with this, it was in Wuhan, and around China. Not the bat soup. I don't care about that. I think that was all a distraction. But how they were using the drones to chase people back into their homes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that, I was like, yeah, something about this is not adding up right. And so that's when it really hit me that, well, it may not be as bad as, whatever the Spanish flu or some, really, really devastating pandemic around the world. But this is probably something that we need to have our eyes open and focused on and make sure we're doing good.
Are there specific websites or news sources that you would recommend?
No,
don't look at the media.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It really comes down to focusing on events in the communities. But here's the issue. We've got 2 guys who are dissecting the death counts in different states across America because they're calling corona deaths, but they're calling any type of death a corona death. And so these 2 guys are going through all the research and the numbers to discern, is this a respiratory death? Okay, that can be actually attributed to corona, versus is it a death of diabetes, of cancer, a heart attack, a stroke? Okay, that person may have corona, but the corona then would be an underlying factor to the bigger issue. So our death count, I think, is so over bloated. And the media just buys into that and runs with that. And really anything that can make America look bad, to make Trump look bad, to make anything that we try to do here in America look bad, most of the media is going to run and jump on that. And those are the voices we normally hear. I really try to focus on actual things I can see or other people can see and report back, rather than focus on any media account.
Yeah, I think the other thing to add to what Dave is saying, I think as humans, we have almost like individual lenses, right? And so, like, for example, some may be more prone to get overly concerned, even going to depression or anxiety or why not, and then they go with that and share whatever information they are getting in, versus some others are maybe more calm. And we have, I think, that tendency to just buy into what sounds really bad instead of like kind of calm down. So therefore, I personally, for example, I try to be informed, but then not overly take that information, because then I start to get worried, then I start to be concerned, and my mind can go like 1,000 miles per hour, and I can have a bunch of ideas. Therefore, I need to renew my mind with things that are true. And as Christians, I mean, we know that fear not, or renew your mind, or like to think about things that are eternal. So therefore, like I want to consume more of that and less of the here and now, although I know that I need to be informed. So I wouldn't like to steer someone like and be like, oh, you know what, you should go and check this out. Because once again, I don't know maybe how they deal with certain information.
Yeah, and something that people, I think more so now than ever, are coming to know is that the media sells sensationalism, because that is what feeds people's fear. It feeds people's drive to constantly consume hype, and it makes us that much more hyperactive. And so, but we also want to know, because we want to protect our families, we want to protect our communities. We have a deep desire to go out and surround those vulnerable individuals. So don't believe everything, like Monica was saying, a grain of salt with everything. I do have one individual that I will point people to, just because I know that he has lived in Wuhan. And he's quite famous actually in American media. I know you're all Americans, but for anybody else watching, and I will hold up his, I don't know if you'll be able to see his screen. Jack, can you see his handle there? There we go, on Twitter. And if you want to write that down, take a screenshot, do so. But he always has facts, and I know that he's connected to several individuals across the board, politically, in media. So he is a trustworthy source, and it's not hype. So, and he's conservative. So what we're doing here, he's also a Catholic Christian. So you got a little plug in there. But be aware of what is being said across all platforms, but don't feed on it. Be aware, but don't watch it. Like, don't just sit in front of the TV and let yourself soak it in. Because what you soak in, like we're told in the word, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So you want to be filling yourself up with what is good and true, and lifting your eyes. Like in Psalms, it says, I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made the mountains. So we have to set our sights a lot higher than what is just happening in our present circumstances, and not to just settle with what is being said in the here and now. But faith is what looks into the future and rejoices in that. So looking forward, what do you want to see coming out of this? So the media doesn't focus on that. They don't care. They want to sell news here and now.
Who else stands to gain from all that's going on? So we've been discussing the media as kind of like the number one suspect.
I have a question. When you say who, are you talking about a specific person? Are you
People,
talking about
organizations, corporations,
okay.
even whole countries? Yeah, like who? I mean, sorry, wow.
Well,
okay, I didn't mean to. That
all
was
capitalized.
really oh
That's
man,
awesome.
bloopers. That's gonna be like in the bloopers, maybe. I don't know. Oh, Monica.
Evil.
I would say anyone, if somebody wants to do their own research, anyone who funds the World Health Organization, and all the people, the corporations and organizations who are attached to those organizations pouring funds into the World Health Organization. That's a lot of people, it's a lot of organizations, but some of the top funders are going to be the most they're going to be the beneficiaries. And we could get to names and different things afterwards, but if you want to.
Oh,
That's fascinating.
You know, I'll just say that we've seen not only nations, I mean, China, obviously, most likely created this as a way of kind of shaking the world order in hopes that it would filter down in their favor. I think total speculation, total guess, but politicians have been front and center admitting that their hope is to use this for political gain. We had a progressive member state that just the other day that, look, we need to hold off on all this funding because we need to make sure that our platform gets introduced. Hello, why are we even considering listening to such a person when we have people dying around the country every day with this coronavirus? Now, is the virus the worst thing that we've ever seen in humanity? No. But it doesn't matter. I mean, like Trump said the other day, one person is one person too many. Can we step out and get in the way of even one person? Maybe it's not the coronavirus they're going to die from. Maybe it's the lack of a job and the stress in the home, and it's a suicide.
Right.
That is one death too many. And can we intervene and do something together to help stop that from happening? Then let's do it. Instead, hey, no, stop the vote. Don't take a vote. We need to move our platform. No, absolutely not.
I would agree. I do believe it is China, not necessarily that created it. I've heard reports saying there's so many mixed messages coming out that I've heard reports that it was created in North Carolina and then shipped overseas where it was developed and then spread. So I've also heard that Canada in some way was involved. So there's a lot of, and I think conservatives really can soak in conspiracy theories. And so be very cautious of that. But in everything, be discerning.
Yeah.
And of course, China is using this to their advantage. Leftist politicians, of course. If you're in politics, I was in politics, I still kind of am in many ways. We like to use issues, say like there's a shooting. What do leftist politicians do? We need more gun control. Right. So every single crisis is an opportunity. And that's both for your personal, how you're going to shift your perspective in a crisis, to how politicians are going to react and utilize it. So I think China, I think, of course, everybody's hearing about Bill Gates. I know for a fact he's exploited so many, just like a lot of other globalists have exploited issues for personal profit. As well as, I'll throw out one organization, IPPF, International Planned Parenthood Federation, Marie Stopes International, huge push domestically and internationally, because I am involved in pro-family, pro-life spheres. They are really pushing for all-blown access to not just surgical abortion, but abortion pills. And that has a huge dangers attached to it. A lot of people talk about back alley abortions and the dangers attached to those. But that, surgical abortion, legal abortion was supposedly going to fix all the dangers attached to back alley abortions, but those same dangers are directly attached to the abortion pill, except the burden is directly placed upon women in their own homes to deal with the entirety of having their child lost. So if there's something that people can be praying for, it's women on campus, it's families in general, because the exploitation is not just about exploiting nations, it's about exploiting the vulnerability of individuals.
In my heart of hearts and on my mind, I think like everything goes back to the heart of man, right? And unless we have Christ, then the most powerful, or there is kind of like hidden agendas, because the hearts are not broken, therefore how can anyone really can care for their neighbors as they care for themselves. So the powerful will try to exploit or get a feast out of the less powerful or out of fear. So maybe us willing to be prayed for those ones who don't know Christ, because in reality, at the end, He's our only hope.
Absolutely. I was just gonna kind of give the information I've found about the origins. What I found is, and I read several different sources to try to substantiate. It still could be bogus, but what I found was this particular corona strain was first found in the lungs of a man in Saudi Arabia. They took it and they couldn't figure out exactly what it was, so they took it and flew it to the bioweapons lab in, I believe it was Montreal, and this is where China becomes involved, because the head team was led by a woman who she's been traced with this coronavirus strain from that Montreal lab. They multiplied it, and apparently we're trying to find out what animals it could be infected with this. But then the whole pile of this virus disappeared along with this woman, her husband, and her team, relocated to North Carolina's lab, right? And then they did work there. No real information about that. And then the next I find is they're in Wuhan. And the Wuhan thing, there's actually two labs. The one lab that's in all the press, but then actually I believe it's turned out that the lab that this was actually produced in, even more so, is way closer to that food market than what originally was shared. Again, I don't think the food market is where it was. It originated from. I think it was probably airborne from the facility. But those are things I found, could be totally bogus, but I tried to do follow-up research, and I got it from more than one source. So, but who knows? Who knows for sure? But
God knows.
well, God knows. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely, God knows.
The things that are happening now are blowing my mind as well, like how the global nature of this. And I see this just, even if I just look through the prism of TRINICY, which is an international organization, a lot of our leaders are from around the world. I hear and see different things, and the governments are responding in different ways, different strict measures or more lenient measures, depending on where they were or where they are. Different news of developing cure or progress, or oh, we're okay now. There's so many things to consider, right? So if I feel like if you're constantly hearing death, gloom, terrible things, that's not accurate, because this is a global thing and it will affect populations and demographics in very different ways. So if you're only hearing like one thing, that can't be accurate, just logically speaking. How has this affected you and your family on a personal level?
Our life is upside down. No, I'm just kidding.
I believe you.
Yeah, well, personally, we have two boys, a preteen and a teenager. So now they are home 24/7. They are doing online school, and they miss their friends a lot. We noticed that we have one that is more like extrovert and really like is missing the group of friends, and then there's the other one that is like, oh, I kind of like this.
Different responses within the same household.
Yes. And as far as like, well, praise God that we still have work. My husband needs to go to the office because his work demands some type of manual reviews or whatnot. And I work from home. We eat more homemade meals, like a lot more than before. And then initially, I wanted to be sure that we use our resources carefully. So I was, my husband or I were the ones cooking, and we didn't let the boys do much because usually they use more than what is needed, or they can throw more things that needs to be thrown away. So that was initially where it was kind of a little bit tiresome. But yesterday, our youngest one actually baked some banana bread, which was delicious.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so little by little, they are starting to go ahead and partake on cooking and making meals, or why not? So then everybody can go ahead and be part of it. And then we're home, you know, like, except I think we went hiking last Saturday late afternoon as a family far away where there are no people around. And then a lot of these conversations, you know, through social media or using the applications or why not. So, but definitely like a lot of like not seeing friends or people that we are part of our life, you know. So that is, I think, that the biggest difference for us.
Thanks, Monica.
I actually, so I do work outside of DC, and my life kind of revolves around work and friends. My family's back in Canada, so I am alone in my apartment, and usually I'm traveling to New York to go and, of course, like advocate at the UN and attend. I was going to be in New York for about a month when this whole thing started, and then they canceled. It was for 2 different UN commissions, and all the prep work that went into those kind of felt like it was done in vain. Not gonna lie, but those were canceled, so no New York trips, no meetings anymore. So my work life has basically went from talking one-on-one with people to complete research and writing. Personally, though, it's actually kind of a blessing. However difficult it is, I'm tilted a little more introvert, so I'm dealing with this pretty good. A lot more phone calls, though. There's a lot of people. I can see and understand now why God connected me with certain people along my journey, because for this point in time anyway, I can see how he's using my life and my faith to encourage others. There's been a lot of late, long drawn out phone calls with individuals who are really, really struggling right now, who don't have family around them, same situation as I. And it's been really cool to see how God uses even the tough kind of grit that you've walked through later on in life to then embolden and strengthen others in their struggles. So lots of research, lots of writing, lots of this kind of stuff, lots of Zoom calls, lots of phone calls. But also it's been a really great time to do all the things that I have wanted to do, but just have not had the time to fit into my schedule to do, like really deep cleaning of my apartment, getting really practical here, writing out, something that's really cool. God actually told me to go back and remember the sequence of events that's led me up to this point in life. And he told me to write them down. And I was like, oh, okay. So I've started a little project of writing out my story. So God uses all things. I am more convinced of this now than ever in life. And just because we've been put on hold in this season, whether it's our jobs or different aspects of life, God's purposes are not put on hold. And so doing that deep cleaning of our hearts has been really, really profitable for me at this point.
Wow.
I like the cleaning of the heart. I need someone to come and clean my house. I don't like cleaning.
I will.
I don't like cleaning. I don't like cooking. I don't like any of the housework stuff.
You know what? I put out a tweet about that actually the other day, and it's when you lose motivation, that's when you have to start practicing discipline.
Yeah.
So,
and I am undisciplined with all of that.
So my situation is similar to Monica's. We have 2 children, a son who's 13. He's more of an introvert, but he has really started to blossom outward and connected with a group of really good friends. And then our daughter is 11, and she is Yeah. She's a wild child.
Oh,
So much
Like,
fun, so awesome.
You're awesome.
Connects with
So honest.
everyone. She is me, in a nutshell. Um, and I really was concerned about her, um, being away from all of her friends and all the excitement, and she's got two buddies in her class, both who have disabilities, and she like is their little caregiver. Um,
Mhm.
but it's been Matthew who seems to have, who has been hit more
Mm.
hardly with this, missing his friends, and just the group interaction. My wife is an elementary principal, and so she has her office set up, out in the living room. We don't actually have like an actual office in our house. It's kind of funny.
That's a good
Um,
thing. That is a good thing.
it is, but it's hard because there's not like an actual place. So we've turned several areas of the house into meeting room areas, and the kids have they're set up at a table, and my wife's set up at a table, and I kind of migrate around a little bit. Um, it has brought its own challenges. Um, I've been an at-home dad now for almost a year, looking for another job, and so it's hit into my routine of, where what I normally did was I'd sit down and I'd search for and apply for jobs for about 4 or 5 hours a day, and then I would do 2 or 3 hours of volunteer work, and then I would do exercising and different workouts, and then I would clean the house. I mean, that was, and I love that. I'm a weirdo. I love cleaning and doing chores and cooking, and I was doing all sorts of stuff. I made both kids a bed. I mean, built it
Wow.
and did all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
And so that's our biggest struggle is how do the four of us still do the things that are unique and fulfilling to us individually, while also bringing it back into the family dynamic to support also the four of us and our four unique individual needs. And I think we're getting there. And now, we're about to get opened up. So, but it's been, there have been some negatives, within the home, just truthful. Um,
Surprise.
you know but I think overall it's been a good dynamic of
Mm.
really connecting deeper with each other, and the biggest thing is slowing down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just slowing down. We're not going 1,000 miles an hour. We kind of have fallen back into a normal routine of bedtime and getting up and just the structure of our life, and I think that has been one of the biggest positives for us.
Routines, disciplines,
Yes.
daily habits.
Totally agree.
Those are all definitely like rhythms.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like
You have to
reconnecting
have
us.
that.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you get crazy.
My life has definitely not changed much because of the coronavirus. Like,
That's a good
seriously,
thing.
like I was like, wait, everybody is joining me in my lifestyle right now. It's really sad, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm hearing like these reports of people going crazy, like getting really depressed. I'm like, oh, so those were normal. But I was actually wondering, how do you do church now? How have your churches responded to the COVID-19?
So our church is, they got into technology, pretty early. Our pastor and our board, they really want to be forward thinking, and so we have had a broadcast of our church services for maybe 4 or 5 years, and so we had the equipment already there, and so they record all the worship services. They'll have 4 members of the praise team come in, and it's not like as maybe upbeat as what I'd like, but there are 4 members of the praise team who come in, and they
Wow.
do the music. The pastoral team is there, and they will go and take turns. Our church is it's unique. It's one church body, but it's split into two different church is. There's a church in Fort Collins and there's a church in Greeley, about 45 minutes apart, and it's the church body serves both communities, and so the viewership is way up, and it's really enabled us to reach out to far outside of our communities, but it's neat because our pastor, he instituted an every week, every church service communion, which was so different from anything that I'd ever done. But I really came to appreciate that and found it refilling my soul every week, versus the once a month or once a quarter or whatever that I'd had in other churches.
That is unique.
And so a couple weeks ago he said, hey, we've forgotten about communion. You can do communion at your house. And so we did, and it was so much fun. When we got married, my grandpa, he was a really, really good woodworker, and he took an big olive trunk, and he cut it up, and then he had a lathe, and he turned it into a communion service arrangement. And so I baked unleavened bread, and we had the wine in the little olive wine type glasses that he made from the olive wood, and we did communion in our home, following the pastor's lead. It was the coolest thing. And so by doing that, we've been able to continue our growth and our relationship, in our fellowship with our congregation. And then I also volunteer with the middle school youth group, and they divide us up into groups. We've got about probably 150 kids who come to youth every week, and we have them divided up into different groups. And through this, every week, we got together and we really were able to bond with those kids. And so with this, it kind of broke that bond up, and it kind of hurt that structure that they had, that they needed. And so what we did was we shared everyone's email addresses, and so I've reached out to all of them, and hey, I'm here. My wife is here. If you have a need, if you have a trouble, if all you need to do is talk, I do it pretty well. Hit me up. We'll get on a Zoom, or we'll do something and have a conversation to kind of help you and the family get through it. And so through that, it really has shown me and our church that the building, it's just a thing. It's just a thing. The souls within the congregants, that is our church. That is our church body. And we do not need to be gathered together underneath a roof or in a parking lot to need to have that feel like our church. We are feeling church in our homes, spread out across the entire country, because there are people who had gone to our church and now have moved away, and they've joined back in our weekly worship services because it's available. So it has been a positive thing for us.
Thanks for sharing, Dave. There's so much in that, the stripping away that you see, they've labeled certain workers in our society non-essential workers, but there are a lot of non-essential things as well in our lives that kind of are falling away, and I think that's really necessary. I think we can see, that wasn't really that important. And we can see more clearly too, wow, this is the first thing I will do once we are able to gather together again as a congregation, as a society.
I read someone saying, you know what, yes, the church is just a building, but I miss it. And I think there is some importance in that. I do understand that as believers, we want to be with one another. You know, like in where we are part of, like we are really a family, and we see each other not only on Sundays for 1 hour or two. We see each other like often, and by often I mean like there is Wednesdays man's Bible study, there is youth group, there is a women where we get together, and there is something unique about being able to get together and to see each other and to like hug each other. It's not the same like I'm talking to you right now. There is some uniqueness about being the body and being together. So I don't want to diminish that. However, to Dave's point, like we had the same opportunity, and the cool part is was like, in our case, the pastor gave the fathers of the household, if there is a dad, of course, to go ahead and lead the communion portion. And I find that to be, to a certain extent, I don't know, it's giving the dads that opportunity to lead and to, I don't know, to share with their example. And I really, really enjoyed that. So those were the two things I wanted to mention about that question.
I honestly, the first church service back, I just feel like it's going to be like this huge celebration. And I have done church online because I worked on Parliament Hill in Canada. I had to travel everywhere all the time. And so I got used to church online. And way back then, I actually was like, man, I miss the body. I miss being together, that corporate worship. And that I appreciate everything that each and every church is doing by their own means to reach people. And I was reading, a pastor had posted a study actually of church attendance online, and it's just skyrocketed. So I can't wait for all the new believers that are going to come and join the churches that they've been connecting with online, because I think it's really going to be a celebration.
Absolutely, and I agree that missing the people and seeing them, I can't wait to get back and there's not gonna be anything going on that first Sunday and Wednesday back other than just like big group hugs. That's it. Just big group hugs, social distancing. It's out the window. There's no stopping it. There's no stopping it.
How have you been ensuring safety or health for you and your family at home? And you can wrap into this question, how are you keeping yourself sane indoors? So not just physical health, but also mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. Thoughts on depression during the quarantine, because I know that's also skyrocketed.
One is have a schedule or a flexible schedule for yourself. You don't have to keep yourself at like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., blah, blah, blah. But write out some kind of structure for your day. Make sure that you're in the Word. That's kind of obvious, but it can become, oh, I need to do this work, or I can go be doing this instead. Feed yourself, feed your soul, feed yourself spiritually. Play music in your house. Just let it go. And while you're cleaning or working or prepping food, whatever it might be, have some kind of music going. Light candles. Do something for yourself in this period of time, but also get the attention off of yourself. Reach out to other people, see how your grandparents are doing. Contact those, like I said, I'm on the phone constantly with people in the middle of the night. Sometimes my phone can ring. So try to take some of the attention off yourself while exercising. I go out on about 2 or 3 walks a day because I have that ability, while people in Canada in some areas aren't allowed to do that. So I have an exercise mat that I'll roll out and do some stretching on or do a workout with. There's tons of resources on YouTube. Equip your mind. Find those areas within your heart when you're in devotion. Ask the Lord to search you. Find those areas that need to be targeted and work. Use this time, utilize it to work on those things that you know that need to be dealt with, but now you have that privacy and that kind of protection of just being with you and those around you to really focus in on what God wants to accomplish in this season.
That was great, Mattea. That's like a listicle. It's like you already wrote an article on this.
No kidding. That was awesome.
Boom, boom, boom. These are the things to do. That's incredible.
I appreciate actually music. So if your spirit is down, or if you're like going through maybe moments of sadness, renew your mind, read the Bible, pray, put music. Worship music is super helpful, especially upbeat ones. And then as far as like caring for the family, just be sure, like in our house, we leave our shoes out and then we wash our hands. We are not going extremely crazy. I know some people like totally disinfect everything.
Yes,
And if
I
that
know those
is your
people.
thing, that is okay. I also have the opportunity to go early morning on walks, and that keeps me like together.
You
And
definitely
praise God, I
still,
have that opportunity because I like walking or hiking. So once again, stay firm on what is true and renew your mind, so then you don't get into fear.
Yeah, and what we've done, we go on walks, both as a family and then individually. We have two dogs, two Alaskan Huskies, and so the kids will take turns taking them for walks, and the goal is that we all try to get about 3 to 4 miles in a day, and it's just walking around the neighborhood. I have been the only one who's gone like to the store and gone out, and it's just, I'm probably the most vulnerable of the family because I've had cancer and I've got lung issues, but I mean I'm not going to let any of them do that. And then it's just being smart. We when I go out, I wear a mask, and I used to not do that, but I started doing that, and really washing hands good, and just being thoughtful and aware of who's around us and what we're doing.
What lessons have we, or have you, or should we have learned from like the global response to the coronavirus? This could be spiritual lessons, practical lessons, family lessons, could be any kind of.
I think on a practical a practical sense, I think what we've learned is that regardless of what virus or disease or infliction or whatever is out there, this idea of social distancing, I mean, it's gonna, it's a created word. It's in our lexicon now.
That's right.
It's something that we now think about. And I never thought about it, but it is something that is never going to leave my mind. And I'm not like a germaphobe or anything. I should be, but I'm not. But yet I now think about how close people are to me and how close I am to someone else. And I was in Costco yesterday, and this guy was going so slow, and I couldn't pass him. And I found myself doing what I normally did, was I would be right on his back feet, and then it hit me. Why am I in such a hurry? Just slow up, let the guy, do whatever he's going to do. But on a practical sense, I think it has really come into our nature of being aware of our surroundings and where others are in relation physically to us. And I think that is a really good thing.
I think one of the lessons learned is don't take things for granted. Like before, we can just go out and enjoy the parks without worrying like, what am I touching? We were talking earlier about like the gathering of believers in person. I think there is such unique that before we were able to, I want to go on vacation, let me go ahead and check where, and we were able to just go. Versus
Right.
now there is not really much liberty in doing so, because you need to really think it through. Besides, I think the airports are not right now as they used to be. So there is, I think, a lot of lessons learned in that aspect, and also to sit still, and remember that we are not in control. As much as I want to be in control, I'm not. And I can rest also in the fact that I know God knows everything. He's in control. He's good. And even on the midst of this, like, I can have our children home. I can hear what they are listening to, the music, the conversations, all of it. And I'm enjoying that part. I don't think we will have had this opportunity to be 24/7 with them And so this is a unique opportunity, and I want to be mindful of that and, I don't know, take it all in.
Mm.
I think both of you have families. So to any of those other singles out there who are alone, I'm actually a huge family person and I believe in it wholeheartedly, but we are away from them at the moment. So I just like to bring that aspect to it. Something that I've been on a journey towards learning is, while I was in and amongst havoc and chaotic politics, the Lord started working on my heart and telling me that I needed to start practicing rest. And I tried so many different ways to rest. And I felt like finally I had gotten to that point of, yeah, I can actually rest in and amongst hustle. And that's something that we no longer really have in this stage of life, in this season, is that need to constantly fill up our schedules. And I actually found myself at the beginning of this new kind of season, Corona crisis, trying to fill up my schedule with, how can I better myself? What books should I be reading? What should I be learning? What should I be taking in? And the Lord, I started doing that actually, reading all these different types of books. And the Lord actually said, stop it. I was like, why? Why am I going to stop? He said, focus on the purpose. Focus on the future, what your promise is. What is it that you're supposed to be doing for the future right now? And I said, oh, okay. So he said, rest now, because once this is over, you're going to hit the ground running. And if you want to be prepared to run, you need to rest. And so I said, okay. So I stopped reading all these self-help books, all these books about politics and policy and whatever else. And I went back to what I needed to actually be studying. And it was quite bizarre for me, because it hit me one day. I was really internally struggling with that calm, because I'm used to everything outside, externally, go, 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 and that pressure. But that once that was removed, I was like, how do I rest when things are calm? And one day, internally, I was just pent up, because I didn't know what else to do. I seek out that intensity, right? Mm-hmm. So I actually went, this is super vulnerable. I went and I laid in my bed. I pulled the covers over and I actually just held on and I looked up at the ceiling and I just said, God, I really need some comfort right now. Mm-hmm. I really need you to just hold me. And I laid there for about 2 hours and it went by just like that. And I just had this peace just wash over me. I don't even know how to really describe it, but it just filled me up. And I was like, okay. And so from there on out, I've just been, and that was about at the end of probably the second week of quarantine. And it was just, it's been very interesting to understand that in both extremes, in hustle and in peace and calm, you can actually find that place of rest, but you do have to be still. So that's one lesson that I would love to encourage people with. If you want to know more, please reach out, because I love talking about it. I love to encourage others in it. And you don't have to be a Christian to find that place. But it is a fulfilling rest and calm, and even a joy that comes out of being able to just be still.
I don't know how long people can take the self-quarantine and the lockdowns. And again, it varies for everybody. So in my situation, my husband and I were, like I said earlier, we're able to fly, to different states. In this current season, we had to worry and pray about, well, is this going to be a move that will be judged by family and friends? And we definitely have been judged for this action. Like, oh, wow, like, how dare you fly around and infect everything, around you? We're exercising kind of a rare freedom that not many people have, and then kind of getting judged low-key mostly. I'm curious, have you done something that merited the judgment, maybe marriages that has been judged by friends and family? Or have you judged a friend or family or just a stranger in person or on social media?
Well, let me pull up my list of grievances here, right there.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll give you one really quick story. I was actually walking home from Whole Foods yesterday, And this woman, kind of like Dave's story, was going super slow in front of me. I caught up to her and her dog walking on the sidewalk. And so I decided to walk around them and proceed, because she had stopped right between a car and the sidewalk. So I was like, okay, well, I gotta get around you. And so I literally just walked around her, and I was about 20 feet in front of her, and she starts yelling at me. She's like, hey, what do you think you're doing? Bleep, bleep, bleep. And I'm like, I didn't even turn around. I didn't acknowledge it. And she said, there's a whole other sidewalk. What are you doing? And she just had it at me, and I just kept walking. But to push judgment on other people, I think, is a reaction to the fear that we can have within us. And so just calming that internal, dealing with your internal before you actually project is very, very important at this point in time, because we're all kind of feeling a little antsy, a little on edge. So check your heart before you speak.
It's so important, Mattea, because
So
a lot
true.
of things could be emanating from inside, like your own fears, right? Like you said, projection. Yeah. But then I think there's also an aspect of like policing each other. Like, oh, this person, like, it's almost like, it occurred to me, it's like a new form of virtue signaling.
Yes.
It's just like, what is going on? Like, even conservatives, like, we're not that it's completely on the left, but virtue signaling is something that both sides or all sides or all kinds of sides can do in their own ways. Yeah. And so, like, for example, like even the lexicon that has been formed through this time, social distancing, quarantine, like things that are usual now, masks, that's an everyday object that is now every man's or every woman's must have now, and if you're not using these terminology, then you're not updated, so it's kind of like interesting things that's going on right now. And so kind of curious about whether it's like stemming from internal or a form of virtue signaling. How else have, like, Dave and Monica, how else have you seen it or been judged for it or judged other people for it?
Well, in my case, I actually noticed, for example, the gloves that people wear. Like at one point, they were all over the parking lots, which I mean, come on.
That's right.
We want to care for our hygiene, but how about let's be cautious and let's be mindful and not throw our gloves around.
That makes sense.
So in that sense, I was like, yes, observing that. And then I also noticed, like, people can have like their mask and their glove and they go about touching stuff, and then later on they rub their eyes with the glove that they are using. So I went through that whole, like, okay, if you will be cleaning chicken with those gloves, would you be rubbing your face with that? So I have thought about that. And then I had a situation at the grocery store. I went to buy things for the week or why not, and there was this teenager that came by, and she came and she's like, hi, and she came and hugged me. And then after that, she realized, like, oh, kind of like what I have done. And I'm like, I'm okay. Like, if you are okay with hugging me, I'm okay with you hugging me. Like, I don't worry about that. If you don't want to hug me, that is okay too. And she's like, I wanted to hug you. Thank you for not like yelling at me. And I'm like, it's okay. And later on, I had situations where there was a mom that came to drop some vegetables or why not. And she looked at me and she wanted to hug me. And then she was like kind of like, I don't know what to do.
Restraining herself.
Yeah. And I told her, it's up to you. If you really want to hug me, you can hug me. If you don't want to, that is okay. I'm leaving that to your discretion. I will be okay with whether you do it or not. And then she came and hugged me. And she's like, I needed to hug someone. I'm like, it's okay. Don't worry. I'm glad you hugged me. So at this, I mean, at those two interactions, I didn't have fear. I felt freedom. And I don't know if others were to judge me because of that. And if that were to be the case, that is okay.
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen is, you know, the Nextdoor app. People are on there freaking out because a lot of people in our subdivision go for walks, and it's always been like that. It's we're not in the city, we're just outside the city. There's a city to city to city to city to city walking path that goes along a river that's just to the north of the subdivision, and everyone uses it. A lot of people walk and ride bikes and stuff throughout our neighborhood all the time. But now people on the app are judging others because, you know, how dare you take a walk and you don't have your mask on? Well, there's no one around me. Why does it matter? And that's really the only thing that I've experienced. I went to the store yesterday, and oh my gosh, I forgot my mask, and I thought, oh gosh, do I go back home? I'm like 20 minutes away. Do I go back home and get my mask? I'll just go. And I felt like I was self-judging myself. No one, I didn't catch anyone, you know, looking at me and giving me the Merzamie look. But I was definitely self-judging myself. You know, how could I be so dumb in coming and not having my mask? You know, again, it's a matter of being aware about things that we've known, but yet we've now hypersensitized ourselves about these different issues.
That's fascinating. At first, I think the conversation was something like, wear a mask to protect yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And then now it's wear a mask or else you hate humanity and you want everyone to die around you, especially, you know, the elderly and the people with the immune system. Like, do your part to save humanity. So it's a little bit interesting, and I'm wanting to hear more about like how the discourse is changing and to what effects, because that is a fascinating thing of almost like another. I see it. I'm suspicious of it becoming like a social justice type thing. You know,
it will absolutely become that.
For that,
it'll absolutely become that. And at the White House press conference, it was either yesterday or the day before, Dr. Fauci, it was the day before, Dr. Fauci actually said the reason I wear my mask, and then it was every speaker who came up, you know, pulled out their unique mask, whatever. But he said the reason I wear my mask is not to protect you from me, it's to protect me from you. And I was like, oh, seriously? Thank you. Thanks a lot for that. Now you have done exactly, you know, what Merzamie, what you've said. That is now going to become one of the new social justice mantras. You know, wearing the mask. You're hating humanity. You're hating me. You're out to get me. And I was like, you know, that's how bizarre and ridiculous. I wear a mask when I do woodwork to protect me. To protect the sawdust and the fumes of the chemicals from getting into me. It's not the other way around, and I'm sure, you know, it will obviously help, but that's bizarre to me.
I think it can be used whether whatever way you spin it, just because people will use it. Like Mattea said earlier, you know, if there's a crisis, it's an opportunity in the eyes of many people.
Absolutely.
It's really fascinating. Do you think Trump's re-election will benefit or suffer for this? Because I know a lot of us all of us right now are in the United States. Do you think the politicization has something to do with the politicization of the coronavirus has something to do with the re-election this year?
Yeah, I'll go.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay. Absolutely. And now I'm going to preface what I'm going to say with this. I hope, but I don't believe, I have no knowledge that any party or group in America assisted or tried to bring this pandemic to be. Now, with that, and going back to Mattea's, don't let this new thing lose the opportunity to make something happen from it. Yeah, it is absolutely become politicized, and political points are absolutely being outwardly affected and attempted to derail Trump, and you can see it in almost every mainstream media news report. Yesterday, perfect example. Yesterday, a scientist is on in the press conference explaining the things that they have discovered if has a negative effect on the virus. Sunlight, UV rays, bleach to a certain extent. The biggest thing is rubbing alcohol, right? So, and now I was in my truck, so I was listening, but I could see Trump when he came up and then asked the scientist a question. So knowing these things affect the virus so badly, couldn't we use them on the people to try to kill the virus now, instead of trying to kill the side effects that have come on because of the virus? And he said, if rubbing alcohol works, can't we get that to the virus? And the scientist said, I've never thought about that. To which then the media replies in exasperation all at once, trying to ask, so are you saying that you want to pour rubbing alcohol down their lungs? And in my mind, I mean, I've had open lung biopsies multiple times, so I know what they do. I've seen it. I've woken up during the surgery and been able to see inside my lungs. It's so cool. I could see them taking a swab that has rubbing alcohol on it, medical grade, and I could see them cleansing in the lung. I could see that, right? That's not pouring rubbing alcohol into the ventilator, but yet they're going to take his logical processing of ideas in trying to come to a resolution and turn it against him and make him appear to be this fool. And any person who is actually attempting to try to resolve this should be thinking the same thing. Think outside the box. Don't think within the little box that is here and now and created. Let's think outside the box to try to come up with something that'll actually allow us to move on from this. Democrats are behind. They have no candidate. I mean, Biden is a train wreck, and Bernie. The country's just not going to get behind a socialist yet. That's not where the country's at. They're a train wreck. And so what do? Let's try to destroy him. And at every turn, what they're not understanding is that he sees where they're going before they make that move. And he already has his counter planned out. And if he doesn't, he's so fast on his feet that he's already pivoted there. As they're speaking, he makes that pivot. You can see it in the press conferences. A reporter will ask a gotcha question, and you can watch his mind and see the workings of his mind as he's dissecting the question before they're even done asking it, to pivot to overtake that question. But they're totally politicizing it.
That's really interesting, because you're giving Trump a lot of credit that not many people are giving him. We're not asking this question to pretend that we're political pundits or anything like that. But again, it's a time capsule type question. Do you think, as a conservative Christian on and off campus, do you think that the coronavirus will affect negatively or positively the U.S. election?
Personally, I'm Canadian, but I'm entrenched in American politics. The one thing that I think is very interesting is the stimulus packages across the board, both in America and in Canada. I think it's going to be very interesting to see just how heavily the citizenry of both countries are going to rely upon that, because it's very socialistic. But especially here in America, the stimulus package was heavily influenced by Democrats, and a lot of it was a political agenda. And so, for example, Nancy Pelosi tried to throw into that package abortion funding, which has nothing to do with the coronavirus whatsoever. It's not healthcare, and so why would it be in a coronavirus relief package? So it absolutely will affect, I think, to a good, for the positive. I recognize and acknowledge that there has been a lot of negative, but one of the coolest things that people on both sides, now I'm friends with socialists, communists, leftists, and conservatives across the board. So from almost every camp except the communists, everybody is saying that they appreciate what President Trump has done, and that is bring the power back to the states. So for example, Georgia, just the governor of Georgia came out with their plan, and it's a very fast, aggressive, get people back to work plan, and he skipped a step that President Trump had produced in his own plan. And so it has been very interesting, because President Trump went on the record saying that he had a call-in with the governor of Georgia, saying that he was not really in support of this aggressive plan, but nonetheless, he is going to allow states to follow through. It's based in the Constitution. It's a revival of the Constitution. And that has been a really positive thing that I think will in turn be very good. I've worked on so many campaigns, national, local, that I think this will be a really positive thing for President Trump's reelection.
Thanks, Mattea. Monica, thoughts on this?
Well, I think of the president as a business owner oftentimes, and overall I think he's doing what he's able to do. As it was mentioned before, like presidents, they act different according to the constituents or the places that they're living. I am originally from Peru, and in Peru right now it's really strict. As far as whether it will have some impact on his candidacy, yes, I can see why. At the same time, I think there are many who are actually are okay with the work that he's doing, but they won't say it. Like Mattea was mentioning, I do appreciate the fact that he put into each governor the decision to whether to open their state or not, because they are in touch, or they should be in touch with the reality of their state. And I think that is delegating responsibility instead of him trying to take over the different states, which I think would be much more difficult. So I think that is good for him to go ahead and delegate that responsibility to others, because once again, governors and going down the list, they know what is going on in their cities or in their states. So I think that is a good point for him.
And you know what, just from a purely political perspective, because I've been a campaigner for so long, I know for a fact that this is politically, strategically smart move, just for the fact that President Trump has been attacked mercilessly. And so this actually takes the onus off of him and places it onto the individual governors. So just if you're wanting to get into politics, just look at who's always being attacked, and then find the positives of moving that attack outwards and not directly on the individual. So just little political point there for you.
We're gonna have to connect, Mattea.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So,
I agree. And
so
what was fascinating was he actually had said, he had said something about pushing to get the country reopened, and immediately the press came and pivoted to him and claimed that he was trying to be the king and dictator. And he said, no, you know what? It's the governor's choice. And it was perfect. And I agree with that. Now, my own county, the county commissioners came out with a not safer at home plan, but a safer at work plan yesterday. Our county is getting ready to completely open up.
Awesome.
In complete violation and contradiction of Governor Polis. But in Colorado, I mean, we kind of do our own thing up here in Weld County, and and we are getting ready to open up, and now it's caused a little conflict in the home because I'm ready to get for the country to get back moving again. Is this a little too fast to open everything up? Maybe, but it all depends on how the people handle themselves and manage themselves to be safe for each other and themselves.
So true.
And that's the way I see it.
All right, we have about 4 minutes to answer our last question. How do you think the world will be different after all of this is done and over with, which is a huge question mark, obviously. But how do you think we will proceed from here?
Well, there's a lot of people. So this is the one thing that everybody has been asking me is, when are we going to get back to normal? And I never want to go back to normal. I do not want our world to go back to normal. Our world has been so screwed up. Our priorities have been misplaced. We've put our hope and structured our lives around where does our hope, where is our sources coming from? And more times than not, we take it from status and how much money is in the bank account and how much we work. It's that hustle lifestyle, right? And so I hope we never go back to work. I hope that all those false gods that we've placed our trust in come crumbling down before us, and we acknowledge that, and that we restructure our minds and reprioritize what is really important in this life. This life is like a vapor, so we better be utilizing the time we have in every single season. And I just want to say this, that, you know, we were not meant for this world. We're in this world, but we're not of this world. So do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed. And when you're transformed, you end up being a light and an influence in your individual sphere of influence. And so don't conform. I hope this world never comes back to what it once was, because we definitely need a revival, a revitalization of family, a restructuring of purpose. Because we've placed it in all the wrong places. So I hope all those gods start coming down, all the idols in our own lives, as well as in society. And I think I believe that we can come out as a much stronger society as a whole if we allow that process to take place.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Dave and Monica, 1 minute each, if you want to take it.
Yeah, actually,
no
I
pressure.
will agree. I will agree with Mattea. I don't think it's going to go back to normal. I think there will be, they should be a new normal where our priorities are different, and starting with our families. First and foremost, I am a big proponent that everything starts in the house, actually. So I think this was a time to kind of regroup. And so it is my desire that we will continue to that. However, throughout history, I think the human heart forgets easily.
Yeah.
So let us remember, and remember once again that our priority is not in this world. Although we need to be the light and the soul of this world, we are always looking up to Christ, because He is our hope, and in Him we have everything that we need and much more.
Yeah, and I agree. My little sidetrack of that is looking at how we can continue to help each other and our neighbors, regardless of who they are, what they believe. Just being kind, neighborly, godly to those around us. And I think if we can do that, then we've really found positive from this whole negative.
Agreed.